Hey, I'm catiewahwah, and with Record Store Day coming up this weekend, I thought I'd share some tips with you about how to prepare for the day. So I've attended Record Store Day for the past 3 years, and this is going to be my 4th time attending. Over that time, through trial and error, I think I've worked out a system. Obviously, this is not going to be an objective, exhaustive list of things that will make you have like the perfect Record Store Day. But I thought by sharing some of my advice, maybe if it's your first time attending Record Store Day, or if you've been coming for years, there might be something that you find useful. And conversely, if you have any advice for Record Store Day, then please do put it in a comment below, and hopefully this can become a resource for surviving Record Store Day. If you haven't heard of Record Store Day before, it is an annual event supporting independent record stores. So the whole idea is that there are these exclusive releases that come out on vinyl, cassette, and sometimes CD, and you can only buy them in store from independent record stores. There are also live performances, and a lot of record stores will also hold like little mini festivals or events within the store or around. And the whole idea is just to get everyone out there and get people to know where their local record stores are and get back into the habit of physically going to an independent record store, which is all great. And I really want to preface this by saying that I think it's a really great idea, but I think it's important to acknowledge that it can be a little bit scary and intimidating if you haven't gone before, just because of the volume of releases, the way that everything is so well organized and so popular. So if this is your first Record Store Day, then hopefully some of these tips will help you as well. So to be very formal, in this video we are going to cover preparation before Record Store Day, the day itself, and also what to do after Record Store Day finishes if there's anything that you couldn't get your hands on that you really wanted. So my first tip is that before Record Store Day, you really need to decide what kind of experience you want to get out of the day. So for example, are you looking to pick up a few of the limited releases? Is there a band playing in a record store that you really want to go see? Or do you want to get a feel for a few different record stores and kind of soak up the atmosphere, do a little record store tour? Or do you want to do all of those things, which is entirely possible if you have the time. So once you've decided what you actually want out of the day, then you can plan your day accordingly. For example, if you want those limited releases, you're probably going to need to go quite early. What early is can be quite dependent on the actual record store. So for some, people will be queuing up maybe an hour before the store opens. For others, people may well queue overnight. So it's worth checking social media, checking for past years when people might have started queuing then. And if in doubt, just go as early as you reasonably can and just see what happens. But if you are showing up to a very popular store around the time that it opens, then chances are there'll already be a very big queue. So the first year that I went to Record Store Day, I showed up about an hour before the store opened, and there was already a queue going all around the building. So that was to Rough Trade East. In the past 2 years, I've always gone like a lot earlier, so maybe 4 a.m, 5 a.m. And because of that, I've been a lot closer to the front of the line, and I've generally been in either the first or one of the first batches of people that gets into the store. But as I said, that can be completely dependent upon the store. It may well be that you can be first in line to a different store just by being there slightly before it opens, but do your research. If there's a specific band that you want to go see, or you're just more interested in general in the live performances, then you can generally go later on in the day. Obviously, you might need to get there still a bit early, but as the performances are usually in the afternoon, you probably won't need to be there at 4 a.m. So you can have a little bit of a lie-in and go a little bit later. And then, if you were, for example, looking to explore a few record stores in an area, then I'd suggest selecting an area where there's like a clump of record stores together. So whenever I went to Rough Trade East, there's a few other record stores just in the surrounding area, very walkable. You're not going to have long travel times between the different record stores, and being able to walk between the different stores that you're going to just makes it a little bit nicer experience, I think. So once you've decided what you want out of the day, however vague that decision is, as long as you've got like an idea, then you can start your research. I know, right? The Record Store Day release list will generally come out at the beginning of March, and that gives you a lot of time to review it, get familiar with it, and figure out if there's anything that you actually want from it. Most shops will also start posting what stock they've ordered, what stock they're ordering in, And then as it arrives, a lot of stores I've seen now will post little videos and photos of the stock arriving. So you can get an idea for how much stock different stores will have, and then maybe choose which stores you want to go to dependent on that. I would definitely advise having a good long sit down and read through of that release list as well. It's a really good time to go through, pick out anything that you absolutely love, pick out things that you're kind of on the fence about, and then also do a little bit more research about each of those. So for example, if there's a first time limited release of an album, it may be that that album has also previously been released in a slightly different version, so the record store day release might not be as exclusive as it seems. And with so many releases, I believe it's over 500 for this year, I think it's really important to know exactly what there is, because say you go to the store, there are a couple of records that you really want to get and they're out of stock. If you are aware of other releases and there's anything that you were thinking about getting but chose the other one over it, then you'll be able to kind of easily think of that on the spot. And then rather than panic buy or impulse buy something that you didn't really want, you can find that record that you did really want. So I usually make a list of the things I really love and then the maybes, and I kind of use that to balance my shopping on the day. The next very important thing to consider is budget. And in setting the budget, you have to be realistic. And I mean that in two ways. So first of all, obviously you shouldn't be going into debt for record store day. Support independent music, support independent record stores, but to a certain extent, right? So figure out what you can realistically afford. But at the same time, it is a good idea to have a look at how much the different records are going to cost. And you can usually find this on the different record store websites. So most record stores will provide a list either online or a paper list in the store of everything that they're going to have in and how much they're going to sell it for. If you really want one of the big box sets, your budget can't be £20. You're just going to be disappointed, you're just going to be frustrated on the day. So if there is a more expensive item that you really want, then you might need to think about how you can realistically increase your budget, or if you're just going to have to give that one a pass this year. And you know, I think actually for like £20 you could get a couple of pretty decent record store day singles, or you could pick up some second-hand records from some of the stores. You can still have an awesome record store day with a smaller budget. Just knowing what your budget is and being confident and comfortable with it, I think is really important for the day, because you can get wrapped up in the excitement. It can also be quite helpful to take your budget in cash if you don't trust yourself on the day. And this is where having that list of the records that you loved and the maybe records can be really helpful again, because it can help you plan what you can realistically afford out of those records. And then if they don't have any of those in stock, you can just swap in the one that was the same price. My next tip seems quite straightforward and obvious to begin with, but I will explain, and that is to prepare. So the first thing is to have the list of records that you want to get in whatever format makes sense to you. So for example, I usually print out a list and I have it with me in the queue, and I know what I want and I can check it again. And that way I make sure that at least I'm able to ask for everything that I was interested in and look out for it. If you are going to a record store quite early and you're planning to be in the queue for a while, I would advise definitely packing food. So whether that be snacks or like a full breakfast, take it with you, because you are going to be starving. And if it's freezing, definitely take a coat, take a scarf, take anything that's going to make you more comfortable for that long wait, because you will need it, and you may not want to think about it beforehand, but when you're waiting in that queue, you are going to miss it. Just as an example, last year I took fold-up chairs. When you're preparing, also check your travel plans. So if you are going by train, if you're driving, make sure that the trains are running at the time that you want to go. Make sure that there is parking nearby that you can use. Do you need to pay for the parking? Is there a certain time that you can arrive between and not have to pay? But again, it's just all about knowing what your plan is and being able to plan to get there at the time that you want, or at least to know in advance when you might be able to arrive there. And just to add to that, if you are planning on getting quite a few records, if you're going to get a massive haul of records, think about how you're going to get them home, because when you go out there, you know, with just yourself and any supplies, it can seem really light, but records can be really heavy, especially with a lot of them being pressed on 180 now. So you might want to think about taking a car or budgeting for a cab to get home. You may also want to think about bringing some big heavy-duty bags for those records, because although a lot of record stores will give you their plastic bags because they're independent, you may find yourself wishing that you had a bit of a stronger bag. Taking an extra canvas tote bag doesn't take up much room in your bag when you head out there, and it can be really helpful. And I feel like it kind of goes without saying, but I wanted to say it just in case it wasn't obvious. If you are going to record store day with other people, then make sure that those other people are similarly prepped, or at least aware of what your plans are, so everyone knows what they need to bring, what time you actually need to leave, and you can just make sure that everyone's in sync. So with all that prep done, on the day itself, my best advice is just to enjoy it. I'm the first to admit that I can get very stressy about it, I suppose. Like, I get really into it, I get the adrenaline going, and I think it's really important to be able to take a step back and breathe and enjoy the day. I mean, once you know what you want, once you're standing in a queue, there's nothing more that you can do. And you are also surrounded by a bunch of people who care as much about vinyl as you do. It's kind of like a big vinyl community meetup. Especially if you're going for those limited releases and you're there very early in the day, you'll find that you're just surrounded by people who care so much about record stores, who are obsessed with vinyl. And I think that's just such a lovely environment to be in. I find it really fun to compare shopping lists with other people, and it always amazes me that everybody seems to be looking for completely different record. Like, there could be something that you think everyone should be obsessed with, but no one around you actually wants that record. And then that makes it really nice within the store if it is one of the stores where all the records are out, because the people that you meet in the queue might be able to show you where those records are within the store. But yeah, it's a lovely time, it's a lovely experience, and I think that's when you really get to experience the spirit of record store day. Once you get into the store itself, I've seen two styles of how record stores tend to do this. So some record stores will have put all of the records out, and they'll either be in the existing displays or in crates on a table, and you'll be able to go through the crates and select the records that you're interested in. In other record stores, you'll need to go up to the counter, and the owner or the workers within the record store will be stood there, and you'll tell them which records you'd like, and they will tell you if they're still available, and if they are, they'll get them from behind the counter. In both cases, it's good to have an idea of which records you're interested in will be the most popular, so that you can go to those or ask for those first. Rough Trade East puts out all of their records on a market table in crates, and I just wanted to reassure anyone that might be worried about that kind of situation, about the crowds. In my experience, every year that I've gone to Rough Trade East, the crowds for Record Store Day have been like the most polite, respectful crowds that I've encountered. So when everybody goes in, they make sure that there's a limited amount of people in the store itself, and everyone is just generally really respectful. Like, people will wait politely while somebody looks through a certain crate. People don't push each other, there's no shoving. It's just generally really nice. So hopefully that puts you at ease if you're a bit worried about it. Once you have found everything that you possibly can afford, find, round up, and you've paid for your purchases, maybe you've gone to a couple of record stores to track down those last elusive records. Personally, I think it's a really good time to find a local cafe, get a coffee, get some breakfast, sit down and just decompress before you go home. Because as exciting as Record Store Day is, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of stuff going on, and I think it's a really good idea to take those moments, take those breaks to just reconsider what's going on. Also, I just love going through my new records and kind of looking at them and smelling them and generally being a bit weird. Plus, if you are going for those limited releases and then you're staying later for the musical performances as well, having that time between the different parts of the day can be really nice to just let you have a chance to sit down and recover, especially if you've been standing up since 4 a.m. Finally, if you haven't been able to find a record that you really wanted and you're just feeling like a little bit upset, which happens to me every year, so I think it's probably a pretty common experience. There are several things that you can do and hopefully these will help you to find the records that you were looking for. So I think the most important thing to do is to speak to the owners or to the people working in the store and just see if they did have the record and they definitely sold out, or maybe if that record was delayed or something. Because while the record might be sold out, there's also a chance that it's just not arrived yet in the store. A lot of records are coming out on the exact same day, and things can happen at pressing plants, and sometimes things just do get delayed. That happened with Shura's single a couple of years ago, Touch, which I think was delayed to almost every store, and there were only a couple of copies available on the day itself. I remember I was really looking for it, and I think a lot of people were, and Shura herself was trying to figure out where the copies of it were and what was going on, and I think it was actually just delayed that year, so I was actually able to pick it up later on in the week. Record stores will also coordinate the releases to make sure that they're distributed evenly after the day itself. So for example, if one record sells really well in a certain area, then other record stores that might still have several copies will usually do some sort of deal to send the records in their stores to the other store. And conversely, if one store ends up with loads of copies of a record and just can't shift them, then other stores in different areas will usually take those as well. So even after record store day itself, everything does still move around, still gets shifted around. That's one of the reasons that it's a good idea to check back during the week following record store day, just in case anything was delayed, just in case anything got redistributed. You may find that you go in on the Tuesday and the record that you were desperate to get on the Saturday but just couldn't find is right in front of you. You can also just keep an eye on social media and on websites for the different record stores. Also, just to mention that record stores are only allowed to sell the record store day exclusives in the stores for the first week of their release. But on Saturday the 28th of April this year, and generally the Saturday after record store day each year, at midnight they are suddenly allowed to sell those records online. So if for whatever reason you just weren't able to get to the store, if maybe you're in a different city from a record store that you really wanted to go to, and they still have a copy of a record that you really wanted, then you can go online at midnight and you can hopefully purchase those. A couple of stores that I've ordered from before are Norman Records and Banquet Records, and they generally have quite a few online on the Saturday. The records do go very quickly online though, so you will need to be there refreshing every so often just as you approach midnight. So those are my tips for surviving record store day and getting the most out of the experience. If you have any tips that you'd like to share, or just general experiences from record store day, I would absolutely love it if you post them in the comment down below, and then we can share them, and maybe I can do a part 2 of this with some of your experiences and tips. This year I'm really excited about attending record store day, and I've got a few on my list, but as always I'm a little bit trepidatious because I never know what I'm going to get. But I am really looking forward to it, and I'm going to be posting up some hauls and some videos to do with that. If you're new to my channel and you'd like to see more from me, then please do click subscribe and make sure that you turn on that alert bell so that you get notifications whenever I post a new video or if I go live. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!